The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Perspectives. My name is David Schoeneman. I'm your host on this program. I'm also the alderman for Ward 3 here in Nashua. On Perspectives, we take a look at serious matters that are facing Nashua residents and taxpayers, and issues that affect us on a state, local, and even a national level. We look at these issues from various points of view in order to keep you, the voter, as informed as possible, and to enable you to participate in conversations with friends and neighbors on these topics as opportunities arise. This week, we're going to take a look at a very serious problem that affects us all here in Nashua, as well as the entire state of New Hampshire, and even affects us on a national level, and that's the opioid crisis. Mayor Donches spoke about the opioid crisis and his plans to address it when he gave his State of the City address a few days ago. And just yesterday, at the Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, Representative Annie Custer held a meeting where she and others got together to discuss the problem and possible solutions. In today's paper, and today is Thursday, February 18th, in today's paper, there was an article about that meeting yesterday, and Police Chief from Nashua, Andrew Lavoie, shared some very alarming statistics, which I would like to share with you right now. In Nashua, in 2015, we had 231 overdoses with 24 fatalities. At this time last year, in 2015, again, the middle of February 2015, we had 8 overdoses and 2 fatalities. This year, we're at 50 overdoses and 3 fatalities. As you can see from these numbers, we're already on track to beat last year's record, and last year itself was a record-setting year. This is not a good record to be breaking. And this is a very serious problem. And these numbers are bleak, but bleak as they are, there still is some good news out there. And with me today to share some success stories in the fight against opiate addiction and to offer some hope to individuals and families who are suffering from this addiction problem are Aaron Spooner and Zach Brewster. Aaron and Zach are part of an organization called Teen Challenge New Hampshire, which is part of an overall international organization by the same name, Teen Challenge. Aaron and Zach, welcome and thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure. When I visited you guys last week up at your campus in Manchester, I met with Hector, who introduced me to the two of you and gave me a tour of the facility. As I was leaving, he gave me a number of pamphlets and books, some reading material, one of which is this special condensed version of The Cross and the Switchblade by David Wilkerson. In it, Mr. Wilkerson describes the origins of Teen Challenge in New York City in the late 1950s and discusses what he went through and how he was called to begin really a ministry there. It's a great story. It's a success story in an area where it's really hard to find success. Can you guys share some of the history of Teen Challenge, its origins, what it's all about, and where it's at today with us?
Sure. Well, as you read already, David Wilkerson was a small-time preacher from Pennsylvania, and while he was in his prayer closet, he happened to look down on his coffee table, and there was a Time magazine that had a picture of a group of teenage young boys that were awaiting trial for killing a paraplegic over their tennis shoes. So he felt led to go and reach these teenage boys. He actually wound up failing to reach the boys in that first trip, but it wound up leading him back to New York City, where he found that there was a big drug problem there and gang problem with young teenagers, and that's how the first Teen Challenge was birthed in Brooklyn, New York, back in 1958. Since then, we have over 250 centers in the United States right now, 8 of which are right here in New England. We have over 1,000 centers worldwide. We're in over 90 different nations, with several nations wanting Teen Challenge to go there. There's no place where you can escape right now the epidemic of drugs and alcohol. And so there has been a proven need for Christ everywhere, you know, and that's what's worked in my life and in Zach's life as well, is the power of God in our lives to overcome and help overcome our addiction.
I see. So you guys had an addiction problem yourselves that brought you to Teen Challenge, and now you're part of helping other people.
Yep. I had a substance abuse problem for 15 years, and eventually, by my early 20s, at the age of 21, I was a heroin addict until the age of 27. And what the greatest thing that I had to overcome was, you know, problems in my life that arose from emotional defects, really. I didn't know how to compartmentalize feelings during high school. I didn't know how to deal with, you know, the normal things that teenagers go through, and I found drugs as a means to escape at an early age, and I just had a switch that you couldn't turn off. And one of the greatest things that Teen Challenge offered me, outside of a relationship with Christ, which was the only thing that had worked for me, and I tried to get sober many, many times, was discipline and consequences for actions, and, you know, a structure that taught me how to be a productive member of society. They gave me all the necessary tools I needed outside of just having clean time. They taught me how to, you know, accomplish goals and tasks. They taught me about, you know, being rewarded for good, and knowing that doing good wasn't something that always required a reward, because that's the way that we're to live. But, you know, my good actions didn't go unnoticed. And, you know, it was, you know, really enlightening for me, because I always received affirmation and accreditation from my parents, but that's what parents, you know, do. They, you know, they tell you that you're doing a good job, and they didn't fail to tell me that when I wasn't doing, you know, the right thing. But Teen Challenge just offered me a wonderful structure and a long-term residential treatment program, which is, you know, extremely necessary in you know, the time that we're living in right now.
I think one of the things that I learned being in Teen Challenge too is that what I do just doesn't affect me. Mm-hmm. The consequences of my actions affect so much more, and that's like he was talking. Zach was talking about discipline, you know, and when we get disciplined, it may affect, you know, visits and phone calls and different things like that, in which, so when I do the wrong thing, not only do I not get to talk to my family, but my family can't talk to me as well. And one of the biggest lies of addiction is, you know, I'm only hurting myself. Well, that's not true, because, you know, right now I have a wife, I have 2 beautiful children at home, and if I make poor decisions, those poor decisions just don't affect me. You know, when if I were to get arrested and go to jail, not only do I not get to see my children, but my children do not get to see me, and that's one of the greatest things that we get to learn in Teen Challenge, is that it isn't just about us anymore, it's about everyone around us.
You know, there is a network, certainly. People are all interconnected, and relationships are probably one of the most important things that we have in this life at all. I didn't face any addiction myself, but I grew up in a household where there was some alcohol addiction, clearly a problem. And the addict felt it only affected him, and it didn't. You know, it clearly has a profound effect, and those residual effects are sometimes hard to clean out. And I think that there are ways to solve these problems, and it sounds like you guys with Teen Challenge have found that. There was something you mentioned earlier, Zach. You were talking about the pain, the hopelessness, I think. And there was a quote in here that I wanted to share too. One of the conversations that Mr. Wilkerson had with one of the addicts in New York City, he asked him, what's the most prevalent problem that people in your age group and who are struggling right now are facing? And his one-word answer, immediate, was lonesomeness. Mm-hmm. And he went on to say that addiction is an outward symbol of a deep hunger for significance in life.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just feel that the pain that people experience is whatever drives them towards that addiction is to alleviate that pain. But the real problem is a sense of significance.
Yeah, I agree. The mind of someone who suffers from addiction is sort of a phenomenon, really. The way that we deal with things that everybody deals with, you know, is just in a much more destructive, you know, manner. And a lot of people deal with the same problems that we deal with in different ways: anger, compulsive shopping, compulsive eating, and other things, you know, as coping mechanisms to deal with, like you said, a lack of relationship and a lack of significance. and I'm not talking about human to human, significance or relationship, but something, I like the saying that my heart had a hole that only the shape of God could fill, and I learned that the first day that I actually opened up a Bible in the 27 years that I was on Earth. At the time, I immediately felt a connection with something that I knew I had been chasing for a long time, but avoided at all costs for the longest time as well. So, people don't like to be lonely, and even me myself, I thrived on, human interaction because it was something that gave me contact, was something that was going to give me some, feedback and give me, a two-way street rather than just a one-way street. But what I found with God was that I could take anything to him, and I received a peace that I'd never felt before in my life. And I received that peace the day that I was in a hotel room, at the end of my addiction, and I got hit with that overwhelming sense of peace, and in turn made a few phone calls because I just knew that I had a problem that I couldn't fix on my own, and I had tried every possible master plan that I could come up with in order to fix it on my own, and when I went to Teen Challenge, it provided just that.
So you had been in some rehab programs?
I did one rehab program in 2000 and I want to say 7. It was a 30-day program. It was roughly $20,000. I can't put the exact price tag on it, but it was a 30-day treatment program. And the reason why I had to go to a program like that was because my insurance company at the time, which I was still under my parents' insurance, and it was one of the best you could get, denied my coverage for an inpatient rehabilitation program. They said I didn't qualify for addiction, and I went through months and months and months of appeals for that. But after the months and months of appeals went through, and I actually did win, the time period for me to go to that treatment was over with, and I had to start a whole new process again.
I see.
So I did try that. I got out a 30-day program, and I was using, I think, 7 days after being released.
So there are programs out there that a lot of people like yourselves may have gone through that had varying degrees of success. It sounds like for you, perhaps not a lot of success. There are 12-step programs. There's all kinds of things out there that, and again, with the State of the City address and with the symposium yesterday at the hospital that Ann Custer was hosting, a lot of solutions are being presented, which is really more of the same of what you experienced prior to coming to Teen Challenge. So do those programs not provide the hope that was missing?
No, those programs give you the necessary blueprint on how to stay drug or substance free or alcohol free. They tell you to get to a support group, surround yourself with good people. They tell you to go to meetings. Sometimes they say 3 a day. I certainly don't have time in my day to go to 3 meetings a day if I'm trying to make a living. But most importantly, they say get a higher power. So it is all centered around something supernatural that can take away your anxiety. But I have a hard time putting a label to it. They say, well, if you want it to be that lamp over there, just make it anything. And I found that, if I'm going to make it something, then why not make it something that's believed to be the creator of all, and that could take away any problem in the world. Well,
that's true. There's, I can put a head of lettuce on the table here, and no matter how powerful my faith is in the head of lettuce, that lettuce
I'm going to eat it.
No.
Going to eat it. That's right. Let's have some salad.
Yes.
It's not going to do anything for me because the whole issue of faith and strength is not the faith that we bring, but it's the object that we place it in, or the being that we place it in. And I think that's the key thing. Yeah. So you finally found something that provided some sense of hope. I heard one gentleman from Teen Challenge say that it's not a 12-step program, it's a one-step program. Mm-hmm. And his testimony was that the one step was finally to get to the point where he acknowledged that he needed some help from his creator. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what has been the cornerstone of Teen Challenge success, from what I can tell.
Yeah. Teen Challenge just provides a place where you can do all those steps in a conducive environment to health. And to recovery. A 30-day program will give you all the steps that you need over the course of 30 days, because you don't need 30 days to discuss someone an outline on how they need to live life in order to stay clean. You only need about 2 hours. But, the 30 days, being removed from substances is not anywhere close enough on a physiological standpoint or a biological standpoint to really, really say that I'm in a place where I can do all these steps and live with the weight of society and the question of now what? I'm sober, now what? I don't have much of an employment record. I'm not trained in anything. If I am trained in something, do I go back to the same environment that I've been living in for the last however many years and try to do it again my way? Or, do I try to go to a long-term program where I can really work out the underlying issues of my substance use, which is, always a me problem.
Yeah, the underlying problem doesn't start and end with addiction. It runs much deeper than that. And see, most of us, as addicts, we're running from our problems, for one. For two, we want the easy way out, and we want that 7-day, I call it the car wash. You go in, get rinsed off, but it's not effective. Neither is a 30-day. We want to spend, 10 years destroying our life and think 30 days we're going to put it all back together. The truth of the matter is that there's roots of hurt and pain that you were talking about earlier with Zach, like you mentioned it earlier, that, we're running from our whole life, and we're just using the drugs and alcohol, masking it, thinking that that is going to fill the void or the pain that's in our heart. In all reality, it's making it bigger, and making it more severe. And in Teen Challenge, I think, outside the, more than the structure that the program brings, the hardest thing about Teen Challenge itself is that you have to deal with you, and there's nowhere to run. You're faced with the mirror of looking at what you've done, and sometimes it takes a long time. When we're out there running, we're not thinking of anyone else but ourselves. It's all about me, myself, and I. And when you're in Teen Challenge, you're sober in your right mind, sometimes it takes months to get some memories back and realize the damage that you've done, and you look behind you and you look at the rubble that you've left in your wake of destruction. And you have to start coping with that and dealing with that and reconciling with that and asking for forgiveness of other people and also being able to forgive yourself, which is, one of the hardest things that I had to do. I mean, it's one thing for me to ask God to forgive me and ask other people to forgive me, but it was a whole nother thing for me to forgive myself. But that's all part of the journey. And while you're at Teen Challenge in that 15-month period. Before it was called commencement, we had this thing called commencement, and the word commencement means the beginning, and really, the 15 months, we just lay out a foundation, and then, and that's just to help you, begin, because one thing that you're not going to avoid is the storms of life. It rains on the just and it rains on the unjust. Stuff is going to happen that we like, and stuff is going to happen that we don't like, and we want to build a foundation for when that storm comes, we can withstand the storms of life and be able to turn to something other than a bottle and other than a needle. And you learn that through the course of 15 months and more importantly, being able to deal with the pain that's in your heart. Because wherever you go, I don't care. I can, stay here in Nashua or I can go to China. But the junk that I have is going with me. I'm packing my bags and everything, that I've done is going with me. And it's not until I deal with that, it's going to be healed, reconciled, and behind me. And that's one of the big things that we like to do in Teen Challenge and why it takes so long.
So it's a 15-month program.
It is, yep.
And it's a residential program.
Yes.
How many beds do you have up there?
We have 26 beds.
And you mentioned the cost for a 30-day program. What's the cost associated with something like this, and how does someone get into it?
The cost of the program right now, the initial fee to get in is $1,650, which we have a $750 induction fee, and it costs $750 a month to be there. And then we have a medical fee of $150. That's a one-time fee. It costs Teen Challenge roughly $3,000 per bed per month. Now we're only charging, not even a third of that to get in, not even a quarter really, maybe a third. I'm not good with numbers, excuse me.
That's okay.
But, $750 is not a lot of money. And as a matter of fact, if you're living out on your own, it's going to cost you a lot more than $750
sure
to get
will.
by. Now, how we compensate that is we also have a vocational program in Teen Challenge. So everyone there is working on something, whether that's on our drug awareness team, where we go out in all parts of the community from, from Nashua all the way to Conway, North Conway, New Hampshire, where I think the guys are heading there. They're there now, actually. And so that's one of the things that we do. We also have shoveling contracts. We work with New Hampshire Motor Speedway in the summertime, and we work in the kitchen, the Levy kitchen, and we do sheetrocking and painting and all kinds of different
You guys got a
things.
catering company, I
We have a
understand?
catering business and everything. And then we have other guys that don't even leave the house, that, they may be right in the kitchen, or we have a laundry program too, where, you don't just go downstairs and do your own laundry. We have someone that does it for you, which is humbling in itself.
It is.
And so another requirement to be in Teen Challenge is you have to have a GED or a high school diploma and
To graduate.
our program. And so we bring you to GED classes twice a week. We also offer, for those people that are in our Phase 5, our transitional program, we bring you to Manchester Community College. They have a 3-week course there where you learn to build a resume, go on mock job interviews. They'll teach you to get online, how to fill out applications online, give you different resources. We also, like I said a moment ago, that people work for different contractors of ours. We also use those resources to allow these guys to get a job as they're coming out of the program. Another part of our program that we've worked really hard over the last couple of years is our transitional program. So you have the 15 months in itself, and then we have another 6-month to 1-year transitional program where we have a staff housing that, like he had mentioned earlier, about 100 yards away on the same street. It's 1 block up on the left-hand side. Where we have 4 beds that are there that are dedicated for people that are transitioning from the program. So they've completed the 15 months. One of the requirements is that you get a job, get a car. You have an exit plan in place where you have accountability. You're going to a church. You're continuing to be rooted and grounded in your faith, and all these things are important. So you're basically out on your own with a little bit of accountability. We can drug test you whenever we want. You have a curfew. I think you have to be home at 10 or 11 o'clock or whatever, and for some reason you go away for the weekend. You just need to let us know that you're not going to be there and when you're going to be back. And this will allow you to be able to transition into society, more smoothly than just go, from a 15-month intensive program right out on your own,
Right. I think it's very, very hard to do that.
Something that he mentioned about the transitional is that Teen Challenge is 12 months as a student and 3 months of aftercare. And what that means is that we've done a wonderful job at transitioning students back into society. So the last 3 months, as the academic coordinator, I personally work with each student's aftercare plan to find out, are they going to a safe environment? Do they want to do a 6-month apprenticeship, or do they want to use us for transitional living? Or are they going back to family, or are they going back to a wife and kid? And how that relationship, has been cultivated over the course of their time in Teen Challenge, as well as jobs. They're able to have access to computers, phones for jobs and job interviews, and we'll make sure that you get there for those. And the last month of Teen Challenge, if they do have a job, we encourage them to work to save up money. So when they do leave, they're not leaving empty-handed, which is one of the greatest things that we've done since I've been a part of Teen Challenge.
That sounds great. Now, you mentioned, of course, that part of your journey, and yours too, Aaron, was this development of faith and belief in God and salvation. Does someone have to be a believer to get in this program? How does that work?
No, you don't have to be a believer. I wasn't personally a believer. I didn't know anything about Christ when I came into the program. What did it for me was when I came in the Teen Challenge, I was hopeless. And, that pain that we keep talking about, that void that we keep talking about, I've always wanted joy and peace, but I'd never experienced it before in my life. And one thing I noticed by listening to the men that were already in Teen Challenge is they came from the same background with me, but they had joy and peace. And I wanted the same thing. And so I gave it a shot, and my life truly has never been the same since. And it's actually been 11 years yesterday.
Wow,
Makes it from
congratulations.
the day that I walked in the Teen Challenge. And so... no, you don't have to be a follower of Christ. You don't need to be a Christian or have anything to do with it. But what you do need to is you need to follow the structure of the program. So we do have, set times where we have Bible reading. We have set times where we have prayer in the morning, and we do have chapels a few days a week, and we attend churches a couple of days a week, and you have to attend, and be obedient to the structure of the program. We can't make you believe or anything, but
Sure.
you need to follow in structure, and whatever may happen in that course and time that you're here will happen. I mean, we've had people go through the whole program, and choose not to have a relationship with the Lord, but most people, wind up choosing a relationship with God.
Well, if they see the benefit there, then clearly they're going to make that choice, hopefully.
Yeah.
While my family member was struggling with alcohol addiction, I was going to Al-Anon meetings, that kind of thing too. I went to some AA meetings, and what I continue to hear is someone would raise their hand, they'd say their first name, and they'd say, "I'm an addict." But they've been in the program for 10 or 12 or 20 years. They're always an alcoholic. Is there any hope for actual recovery of not being an addict anymore?
2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old is gone, behold, all has become new." And that is like one of the first scriptures that we learn coming in the Teen Challenge. That I mean, the last thing that I would ever do, being 11 years clean yesterday, would be ever think that I'm still a drug addict or someone that I don't believe that. I mean, I'm a new creation. That's not me anymore. I'm a new person, Now, that doesn't mean that, I'm going to make poor choices and stuff. I mean, of course, I'm not going to go to a bar to have an orange juice, So I'm going to make, the right choices and decisions in life, but and realize that there's certain areas that I may be weak in, but by no means am I an alcoholic anymore. By no means am I a drug addict anymore. I'm a new creation in Christ.
And by no means does it dictate if we do make bad choices, we will certainly return to what we were doing before we ended up getting in recovery. But I don't like to think of myself as someone that's currently right now struggling with addiction, alcoholism, and that's not to put down anything
Sure.
that has to do with Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, because there's some great people in there that have a long time sobriety that are helping people. But I choose to believe that I'm a new creation, and I choose to believe, and I do believe that I've been set free from those things. Do I still struggle with, thoughts of my mind? Yeah, I did the same thing for 15 years. Of course, there's going to be memories in my mind that bring me back to times, but those, I don't really think of good times. I always think of bad times because I didn't have many good ones. So, it's a good thing to know. And I think the day of Anonymous is starting to wean down. I think, I know that how can anybody out there that's struggling with addiction find hope where people aren't talking about their success stories? And I'm not talking about, your average, in and out of, recovery person. I'm talking about the people who really make it, the people who are successful businessmen, the people who are CEOs of countries, doctors, physicians, lawyers. There are people out there that have wonderful testimonies that keep it anonymous for the sake of maybe their job or anything like that. But with the way that the politicians are talking about their family members and their loved ones, succumbing to addiction or battling addiction currently, I think that the day of Anonymous is going to be over at some point soon, or at least I hope so.
I would hope so too. Actually, we spoke in the beginning about the lack of connectedness.
Yeah.
And I think that Anonymous, as good as those programs are, I think people are still longing for some kind of connection. And so having first and last names and a true story to tell, that's a success story, is good. We're almost out of time, but very, very quickly, is there a success statistic for Teen Challenge? Is there a number that...
We had one from back in the late 90s, but more recently, somewhere in the mid-2000s, I heard of a statistic for Teen Challenge done by the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and those that had graduated the Teen Challenge program were somewhere in the 67% success rate, and they were tracked for, I think, 7 years, but I could be wrong on that statistic too. I wasn't prepared for that when I came in, so
Okay.
Our choir guy usually handles all those statistics. But, with that being said, Teen Challenge is 15 months. And so you have to think about, that statistic is based on people who have graduated, but that goes for just the same as any other program. If you leave early, or if you don't do the necessary time, or you don't put the necessary work in, your chances of success are much, much more slimmer than that of completing something. Because, the God I serve is a God of completion. And, he wants me to complete just as much as he wants to complete the work that he had started in me, from birth. I mean, I don't regret anything that I've gone through. My testimony has given me wonderful doors that have opened up, and, for a future career and things like that. But I wouldn't be where I am today without the experiences that I've gone through. And I spent a long time in self-condemnation and a long time in guilt. And, as my years passed and I watched, all my best friends and stuff graduate college and get married and stuff, and I was still in the same place. I had a big, heavy monkey on my back, full of regret and stuff like that. So, it's never too late. So, make the phone call. Teen Challenge is not a locked door facility, and we're not going to, chain you to the walls and make sure that you stay. It's an open door policy, but what's the harm in, seeing for yourself?
There's no harm in that at all. I know you guys have some outreach programs. You've done something in one of the high schools here in Nashua.
Yep.
Can you tell us briefly about that?
We have this campaign called Making Good Decisions. I think they're in the middle of changing the name of that, but last I knew it was Making Good Decisions, and we go into high schools all over New Hampshire, letting them know, the consequences of their actions of using drugs and alcohol. And what they do, it's a PowerPoint presentation, and they use the latest, popular people that everyone sitting in the audience would know, of different people that, are famous, that are suffering consequences from their actions of using drugs and alcohol, and just giving the youth an opportunity to let them know that they don't need to make the same bad decisions that we made. They can make the right decisions now and not travel down the same road that we did. We also have meetings right here in Nashua on 36 Toll Street. Used to be the Upper Room, is now the Teen Challenge New Hampshire Thrift Store. We have meetings on Monday night from 6:30 in the evening to 7:30, and it's called Path to Freedom, Christ-Centered Addiction Recovery meeting that we have, that's hosted by Chad Wilson. His phone number, if anyone wants to reach it, is 203-668-8381, and he is the facilitator of that meeting, and he's also the director of the thrift store there. We also have a small crisis referral center right there on 36 Toll Street, which is a perfect area for us to be in.
Yes, it is. So there are ways to get in touch with you. You've got a website, and you would encourage folks to reach out to you with any questions, no matter how desperate, if they're in that hotel room where there's really no place else to go but further down. When they're in a crisis mode, get in touch and see if there's some possibilities.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. It's been very informative. I learned a lot listening to you, and this is a very serious problem. And it's just good to know that there are true success stories. It's not all bleak. I mean, as bad as the numbers are, it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the line. There is life available, and good life in front of us.
Yes,
well, thank you again for coming in. Thank you, folks, too, for tuning in once again to Perspectives. If you have any questions or comments about this program, please reach out to me at perspectivesnh@gmail.com. And again, if you need some help, or you know someone who needs some help, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to Teen Challenge as one possible solution. Thanks once again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.